Over to Zinnia.
Yes, thank you. I hope you can hear me okay.
You
And
sound
I'll,
great.
okay, super, thank you. So I wanted to share a couple events for y'all. Let me put that in
Over to
chat
Zinnia.
as well. So please join us for the Yellow Theme Common Ground Networking Party on Sunday, August 11th at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. SNL time. And this is hosted by our community virtual library. Common Ground event is also part of our Virtual Worlds MOOC. Yay! Now, if you are unsure about finding something yellow to wear to go with our theme, my other option is Aloha patterns. And I'm sorry, I'm not putting that in chat. Common Ground. And if you're wondering what Common Ground is, it's almost like a progressive party. It supports all of our community members. So what is Common Ground? Enjoy networking, dancing, among other nonprofits, educators, students, humanitarians, scientists, artists, and supporters to learn what we accomplished together in Second Life in this fun, informative event. Thank you, Ree, for sharing that. And also have time for our upcoming birthday celebration. So on August 16th, our theme is Time After Time Persistent Love, the Nonprofit Commons 17th anniversary celebration. And like clockwork, you will find us supporting each other Friday mornings here at NPC. So it's part of our normal programming. Yes, and another Virtual Worlds MOOC event. Yay. Uh-huh. Absolutely. And the color themes are based on the colors I used for the first Friday Art Walk here in Squim. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. Yes. Yes, absolutely. It's a lot of fun. And to really encourage people to come and join us. And then our theme for our birthday celebration is steampunk. So you can consider that it'll be steampunk or solar punk. Thank you.
And Bevan, I think you have an open mic still. I can hear you. Thanks.
Joyce, did you have anything to finish before I start?
I don't know if Buffy saw that. Maybe she's. Oh,
Okay.
here she goes.
Sure, sure. So Buffy is adding that if you're a premium or a premium plus member in Second Life, you can try out the Second Life mobile app, which is the viewer on your mobile phone, before the next session, August 9th. It's still in beta, so they're hoping for our feedback to help refine and improve the tool for use. Oh, that's great. Hi, Roxy. Good to see you.
And yeah, if you do have anything quick, I don't know if there are any other announcements, Ellie or Val, you want to throw in the chat, you can. Or, of course, you can also speak it. And on the production side of the MOOC, folks, um, if we're good, we might be able to start a little earlier. So yeah, and feel free to put anything MOOC-wise in the chat.
Sure.
Are you guys okay? I don't know if you're already recording or...
Well, I need one moment as we get
Okay.
started. I need to ask everyone to move. This is going to be like a live production. If you would please move in your seat closer to the aisle. Most of you are fine, but anyone who's on the end point, let's see who that might be. Jill Marie, you need to move in a little bit because I don't want the rezzer content to hit you. We're going to be kicking it early Second Life. So Jill, I'm going to be rezzing student projects and I don't want them to hit your body. There we go. Yeah. Oh, you're looking great. Wonderful. Just like real life, right?
Do you need Zri to come over
Do
closer
I need
to
what?
us? Zri on the side, or is he good? Look to your left.
Yes, you do. Um, the end seats on both sides have the potential to be outside the environment, or you may have a schoolhouse land on top of you, Sri, just so you know. So you might want to move in just a little bit. And I'm going to prep the thing. I've been blocking it so it wouldn't kick off while we were talking. But I will lift the lid now. Let's see. And then we'll have an official start. There we go. Let me know when to begin. And you don't necessarily have to start the recording. I could give a little backstory if you want.
Yeah. Are we good on the MOOC side of things, folks? I don't know on their end production-wise, just waiting for that go. Fantastic. Yay. Okay. So with
Yes,
that,
we're here.
great.
Great.
So with that, and we're a few minutes early, which is great, gives a little bit more time. So today, as part of the Virtual Worlds MOOC, we have Lobo, Dr. Cynthia Calongne, kicking us off with the power of creation. Lots of AI goodness. So with that, Lear, I will let you go and you can kind of fill in from there.
Thank you. Thank you, Joyce, and thank you to the Virtual Worlds MOOC 2024. We're kicking it off. I know they had the big kickoff yesterday, but for me, it always begins with the power of creation. And what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit different. I have two sets of slides, but we're really not going to be doing slides per se. That just gives us some context, right? And some visuals for our recording. If you see this rezzer on the ground, and don't click it just yet, because it will respond to everyone. It is one of the circles next to the NPC. And I just wanted to give a little backstory here. What I thought I would do today is be in Zoom and show you behind the scenes what my students see when I teach a class. I've taught 62 university classes within Second Life and Open Simulator for the last 19 years. And I love it. I fell in love with the power of creation back in 2005 and then 2006 with the New Media Consortium. Um, I work for many universities and I've taught in the virtual world for 3 universities, in case you're wondering. That's 19 Currently, years. I'm kind of semi-retired and only working for 2 schools. So I stay flexible and students see what's on my screen and see how to perform the tasks, even as we're doing the homework and describing everything together. So let me get started. Now, I'm actually not going to be covering AI today. I know that sounds weird since I teach AI, right? But I changed the talk last night since you're not seeing my screen, and I'm just using this image to talk about my creation. The fact that when I create in AI tools, I feel so creative and on fire, just like my students. So we're going to talk briefly about why we create in these worlds when we're in a class. We're going to talk briefly about the flow model by Csikszentmihalyi and how we learn. We're going to look at a meta study just for a moment that analyzes 12 studies that relates them back to flow and why flow matters, why it is that we love these worlds and we come together. We're going to look at some content by Arcadia Asylum, who is better known as Ali Array or Ali Resident here in Second Life. And some of my students have featured some of her content in their designs. And then we're going to look at student projects, and I have them on holodecks. You're going to get a copy of my holodeck with some extra content this year. I did feature some of this in 2018, but who knows, you might have missed it or you didn't have the story behind the story. So here's a box. Notice I enlarged it. The creepy looking box is coming near you, and if you'll just left click on it, and if everyone clicks at once, it's not going to service 26 people at the same time. So make sure you just check back, make sure it gets into your inventory. I'll slide it behind me here in just a few minutes. So, or across. There it is. It's on the N in NPC on the floor. So, moving along, you'll notice the flow model on the left. And you know why this is important? Have you ever Do you remember back when you first came into Second Life or Open Simulator or any virtual world tool? You might have started with Active Worlds prior to 2004 or, any kind of tool. And do you remember how it felt to use the viewer to access the world? When the challenge level is high, and I want you to look at the very far left of this diagram. When the challenge level is high, it's up towards the upper left. You notice you feel anxiety if you're new to it, right? If your skill level across the bottom is low, you might be worried, or you might have apathy if you feel that you're not supported, you don't know quite what you're doing, and of course, it just doesn't feel right for you. Many of our students feel like this when they first enter classes, especially doctoral classes. And see, I was bringing students in who had a high fear factor, right? The first B put them on academic probation. The second B, and they were dismissed from the program, right? That's fear. So my goal was to make it comfortable for students, to increase their skill level proportionally with the challenges I gave them.
Like, I
And
don't know
I
if there are any other
insisted that
announcements.
every student create a project. And why did I do that? Well, we'll finish with the flow model and then we'll look towards the right. So as their skill level increased, you'll notice on the chart along the top of it on the left side that you get to the state of arousal. You get excited, energized, on fire, right? And our goal is to get to that Fiero that Dr. Jane McGonigal talked about, in many of her talks and in Reality is Broken, you know, over to the state of flow. You know, so if your skill level was high, looking along the bottom, and the challenge is low, you're fairly relaxed. And that's how many of you are here in the world after 17 years of meeting with the nonprofit commons. We're celebrating our anniversary this year, and we've been celebrating social good around the world all this time. So we're feeling pretty relaxed today if we're comfortable with our viewers, we're comfortable with the world. We feel like we're in control. The more the challenge increases, we still feel like we're in control. And our goal is to get to that state of flow. So, how does flow assist us in learning? Well, let's look to the right. Now, I know the learning pyramid gets a lot of criticism, but I love it. You want to know why? I am not a professional educator. This is important to say because I've been teaching for 28 years, right? I am a software engineer and a systems programmer who worked for Air Force Space Command. I worked in the situation room, a mirror of it, let's put it that way, that you might have seen in the movie War Games, right? And of course, it was a high stress job in the sense that if the software didn't work, there were 16 bases around the world that were very unhappy with me. So, of course, I had to get it right the first time. And that's what I call an engaged and active job, right? So I think about those experiences when I teach. So I think about the fact that I want my students to have skills that will support them when they work for the Department of Defense or in the medical field or wherever they work, in whatever high stress occupation they have, that they can be a leader and feel comfortable. So, how do we get there? Well, we don't get there by just listening to me talk. And so you're not going to just listen to me talk today. Uh, that would be 5% lecture, and that's at the tip of the pyramid, if you see it there. Now, this study came out of, I think it was like 1972. They've lost the original data for it, so that's one of the criticisms. And of course, um, the thought here is how much do you remember 24 hours later after an experience? So they noted that with 18-year-olds, they were remembering about 5% after a good lecture, not a boring one, but a real riveting good lecture. If they read the material, they were remembering 10%. Now, you know what this implication is. For those of us who are thinking that AI is going to teach us and life is going to be amazing and we're going to learn just like the Matrix, we're going to, just flood our senses with knowledge and instantly have all these mad skills because AI is there, right? Well, the question is, we have to be engaged and involved for this information to become our information. Otherwise, and this is what their study showed. Now, this may not be supported today, so I am hoping this is a call to action to our virtual world MOOC and to educators everywhere that we need to take action to see what do students learn when they do experience AI just by reading it, okay? Now, if you watch videos, people love videos, don't they? Yeah, it's part of our video culture. And by the way, there's a wonderful commentary going on in the chat. And please go ahead and keep talking and also ask questions because I love interaction. To me, that is active listening. Faust had added something, but I know Kung Fu. And of course, Shiloh is saying this is a great slide. It's important to me, Shiloh, because since I am not a professional educator, I don't have an education theorist background, although I have attended, 28 years of educational conferences, and I did support several groups in ISTE, the International Society for Technology and Education. That doesn't make me a pro. Experience does. And so, if I just showed videos to my students of all the behaviors of how to design here in World, and I gave them access to the videos that Avicon created on that are available on their website, by the way. So if you ever needed educational videos on how to build, how to create, how to do things in the virtual world, please check them out. Marcus Llewellyn created them and they are wonderful. But students don't just learn by video, they don't just learn by reading, and they don't just learn by listening to me, even if I do the voice, right? And I'm a role player. Many of you know I'm painfully shy, and so the only way I can, teach comfortably is by connecting with individuals and thinking about the importance of each person as they learn. That wonderful symmetry. So I demonstrate a lot. I love cognitive apprenticeship. Let me put that word in there in the chat real quick. Cognitive and apprenticeship. And of course, I wrote a book chapter on it in one of our books, maybe two of them. And I use this all the time. And you know what it means? It means I like to do the homework with the students. Now, there's usually a fear factor about that because most of us as educators do not like to look foolish, right? We like to look good. And we like to maintain power and authority in class. And the difficulty is it's a big world out there. And the state of knowledge is always changing. So there are opportunities for us to miss an important change and look foolish when a student or someone brings up, hey, that no longer works that way. And if you wonder what I mean, well, let's look at an example. Do you remember the Brontosaurus? Anyone? Give me a yes or no in the chat. Let's warm up, make sure we're awake, get your coffee. Yeah, the Brontosaurus. Oh, you don't, Shiloh. Oh my gosh. The Brontosaurus, when I was a little girl, and I will admit I'm 67, that was a while back, right? When I was a little girl, the Brontosaurus was the dinosaur with the long neck. You didn't even have to think about it because we knew exactly how that looked. And then the state of knowledge changed when I had a child. And we started collecting little dinosaur models, right? And I learned that, oh, now there's the Brachiosaurus and I'm going to butcher the name of this, but it's okay. The Diplodocus or Diplodocus, who knows? We'll give them both equal time. But the one with the really long neck, right? And so as we think about these dinosaurs, we had other flavors, right? But the Brontosaurus was mostly upright with a long neck and was very popular when I was young. And then all of a sudden, the state of knowledge changed when they found new bones. And they said, oh, it's now this. And I thought, wow, it's the make me a newbie as a mom, right? So I lose my power and authority because I have the wrong name for the dinosaur models. Well, guess what? In 2015, they found more bones, and guess you got it. The Brontosaurus was back, and he got his model back. And things changed again. I saw the article, I think it was a Scientific American article, and I thought to myself, it'll keep changing. And so What I tell my doctoral students is it's important to keep abreast of these changes and be well read in our field. But if it ever changes and you miss an important change, do not feel like your power and authority is gone. Instead, start getting into the warm part of the model here, the engaged model, where we discuss it, where we share these ideas without fear, and where it's okay to not know something. So when I grade discussions, I don't grade on everyone having perfect knowledge before they got started. Because let's face it, when you first get into a doctoral class, we're going to talk about many things that you don't know. Even if you're an expert in the field or someone who is a CEO, in that research field, um, you could be a lead researcher somewhere, but there's always something. And I remember the first class I ever taught. It was in 1996, and I was finishing my dissertation. I was just about to graduate, and the dean grabbed me and said, "You must teach this class." And I said, "Oh, there's no way I could do that. I am painfully shy." And he said, "You're going to have to do it. You are a leading researcher in this field, and that's part of our requirement is that you learn to speak to these folks." And there were 30 people in class, and that's a huge doctoral class. Oh no, that was graduate, excuse me. It was a master's class in computer science, and I was teaching the user interaction class, which is like a human factors usability class about designing products that were usable. And my students were in systems that have vastly improved over the years, so I will mention a few of them. They were from the FAA, from the satellite operations, from emergency services, and all of them had interfaces they were working with that were text heavy or number heavy. They'd have to put down a 6-digit string of numbers to know where they were in the city, for example. And it was a high cognitive load for the emergency services providers because they didn't have a map and they didn't have all this geographic visual information to relate to for fire, for your emergency vehicles, for your ambulances, etc. So they were in my class, the first class, and they were all designing systems. And I had a gentleman who had 22 years of experience in my subject for that class from IBM running a usability lab with a two-way window, similar to those crime shows where they're interviewing a suspect, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to teach these people that's new and fresh and interesting? And then I realized those products that they're all supporting need a lot of work. They need to support people and how people think and reason and behave. That's what we mean by cognitive. It has to support your behavior. So I started thinking about the engaged part of this model, and I thought, okay, we will talk about it. So we created a Moodle at that time, and well, we were here in Second Life, and so students would post on a Moodle everything they did. They would post their discussions, they would share in a discussion their projects that they were creating here in the virtual world. We talked about everything. I didn't offer exams. Everything I did was applied learning. So we did this practice by doing. And our goal was to get beyond the 75% because I didn't want to just teach people. I wanted to give them the tools that they could use throughout their lives, and not just in the virtual world, but in every world. Okay? And our goal is so they could teach others, not so they'd become teachers per se, but it's this notion that we have this cognitive apprenticeship where we develop mastery over time in whatever we're doing, and then we share it with others. This is a critical part of my classes, and it's something that every student does. Now, you're going to get a copy of these slides. In fact, for those of you watching on Zoom, I'm about to shift drag and give you a copy. I'm going to reduce its size. I'm going to bring it forward. I'm going to move it to one side. So our video is like, oh, there she goes, moving content, right? Throw in content right and left for the win. And then I'm going to put it behind Joyce just a little bit and over to the side. And I'm going to turn on, the copy is on for that. So if you want to get a copy of that little viewer, you're certainly welcome to. Now you don't have, I will lock down my slides. It's okay. You'll notice when you shift drag a copy, my point here is that it unlocks the viewer for those of you who are new to this. So I'm locking it on the side. Secondly, it always sets it back to the start point. And see, as educators, if we're teaching live and we have a lot of content moving and we want students to feel comfortable, right? We have to be comfortable too. We have to know what's going to happen if I share. Yeah. So here we go. So this is a busy slide and you don't have to memorize this. I can give you the link for the paper. It is the Hoffman and Novak paper on flow if you were searching for it. And it's a meta study. So in the legend, it mentions the 12 papers they analyzed. And you would notice they're from the years 1996 through 2007. And the paper came out in 2009. And I use this in my classes because students are always telling me, oh, this is like a game, isn't it? At least they say that at first, right? And of course, Second Life is not a game. Open Simulator is not a game. They are worlds for creation. They are spaces in which you can create content if you so desire. And for students, my goal is to get them to practice by doing and to teach others. So creation's an important part of what we do. But of course, they were worried, oh my gosh, we're going to spend lots of time in here and I'm going to get addicted. And so the paper number 5 talked about addiction, right? And then it's really attractive, but some of it's a little strange. There's a playful quality and there's a novelty, and there are papers related to all these things. So we think about all this, these behaviors. And of course, I always tell my students everything we do in here, let's do in 10 minutes or less. That's my model for teaching. 10 minutes or less. Now that sounds strange, doesn't it? But the thought here is that I got my students in those early days to come synchronously, even though the class was online, even though they had busy lives, even though, you know, it was not scheduled to meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays for an hour, even though, and I got them to do projects, right? And group projects. And students fear group projects. The reason they fear them in a doctoral program is not because they're not team players, but that they're busy. They have full-time jobs and lives, many of them. They are a non-traditional student in the classical sense of it. Some of them teach for other schools as well, or are deans for other schools. And then they all have a high fear factor, and they're also working on computer science research or management research. So learning a virtual world is not their primary goal, right? So I'm asking them to do something that has a high cognitive load. Now, what you're seeing on the right are some notes I took from a uh, Dr. Andrew Stricker had a cool model and he had a cool image and an insert for this chart on the left. And he broke down the definition of the term at the bottom, which is virtual intersubjective presencing. And for any of you who participated in Delightful Dewangle's research back in 2012 through 2013, she had studied for her doctoral degree at University of Central Florida and then had left that program during her dissertation phase to study with me. She restarted all her classes and did a second doctoral degree. And she wanted to define two terms. One was virtual physioception, which means your body as you're here, how you're represented. And then this intersubjective presencing is defined by the bullets. And the bullets say, we're going to perform a challenging activity. That absorbs our attention, right? That's the immersive property of a virtual world. We're not doing it with a head mounted display device on our face. or with data gloves or all the other stuff that I tested with back in 95. And then I had to shut down Teams. Sorry. Someone wanted to meet with me right now. And then we have clear goals and feedback. Feedback is important in a virtual world. And so I moved my office into the virtual world. So I was always here when students would show up to work on their stuff. I could watch them struggle. The struggle is important when you're doing apprenticeship. You have to give people opportunity to try things out and to fail. We often don't think about failure. I do because I think about assessment. How will I evaluate the success of a project during the process while it's being created, while we're struggling? And so I love the struggle, but I know that doctoral students can only do it for a few minutes and then they get a little stressed, right? Because that first B puts them at risk and the second B gets them dismissed. So they must have excellent grades. Now, this is a little different than some of you here at the Virtual World MOOC because your students can have a variety of grades, but not so at the upper levels. It's not like the movie Armageddon where they talk about the guy who has an astrophysics degree and got a D in it. That's not happening. We don't want experts in the field and researchers who don't know what they're doing, right? When they graduate. So, a high level of concentration. They're focusing deeply on what's going on. And there's this sense of control. Now, remember how control was happening on the flow model? And I could flip back to it. It's not hard. I can just click at the bottom of my slides here and go back. I don't even have to hit the back button. That's one of the empowering features of this viewer by Dr. Partridge Allen, who used to be with Adobe and now is doing other wonderful things, and I highly recommend his designs. He had some of the most amazing games that his people designed at his site here in Second Life. So we want to have control. See the control on the left? It's at the 3 o'clock position. And so that's what we're going for. We want our doctoral students and all of our students to feel that sense of control. And then the loss of self-consciousness. I no longer fear if someone speaks or something happens or we worry about what's going to happen next. As an educator, am I in control of this experience? Then the experience of time. We lose track of time. And that's how we start measuring addiction, right? When we start repeating tasks that interfere with life, we stop eating. And my friends started giving me little statues that show a lady with her head back, long hair, sitting at a computer. This is a little statue that's sitting next to me on my desk. She has gone skeletoid because she forgot to eat while so excited in virtual worlds and games. And they got it for me to remind me, don't don't forget to drink water. Don't forget to eat. Just because this is an exciting, engaging, wonderful space and you're spending a lot of time in it doesn't mean you need to forget about life, right? So temperance is important. For those of you like Faust who are very passionate about the signature character strengths and how to feed our spirits. So we're all interconnected here as I'm teaching and having these experiences. Now, last month, Mal Burns kindly had me on the Meta World Broadcasting live streaming show that talks about VR news, virtual world news, and everything else. And he had asked me to give a second shopping extravaganza, and I'll give it for the nonprofit commons at some point later this year. And I'm standing here next to an object that inside of it has a lot of content by Ali um, resident here in Second Life. She had the names of Arcadia Asylum in the Open Simulator and Alley Array. And there's a little quote here from that you may remember the source of. That's your trivia question. Um, and of course, it's very poignant because it reminds us of why we're here. The moving finger writes, and having writ, it moves on. Nor all thy piety nor wit shall lure it back to cancel half a line. nor all thy tears wash out a word of it. Does anyone know what this is from? It's from Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat, the astronomer poet of Persia, translated in 1859 by Edward Fitzgerald. Also used as the name of a short story by Edith Wharton in 1901. Now, the reason I mention this is Ali Resident created a lot of content that alleviated the stress of my students. In the early years, I made everyone create everything. And when I say early years, I'm talking 2005 through 2007 or 8. And I created things too. I created robots for Lego Mindstorms NXT before they released. Wired Magazine had a joint contest here in World. It was called the Big Robot on Campus, and I'm a member of that group as a result. And we built all kinds of robots, and we thought about how things move and how they should behave. And I know you're thinking, well, that's just virtual. That's easy. Well, it's not as easy as it could be. The parts they gave us didn't include a wheel or an axle, and I realized that my bots were either going to have to fly through space like drones, or we needed more parts. And that was part of my feedback to them from that 2006 contest. So I think about Ali Resident, and she empowered, he, I'm not sure which gender, but was represented by a female here in World. And, I think about the contributions she gave to amazing technology. You're going to see at least one of her designs today from my student projects. So after 2007, I alleviated the stress of some of my students, and I said, you need to have a story. You need to think about the experience you wish to share with others and create projects that offer experiences that illustrate the power of your ideas, that anchor to our class subject, right? That qualify you for your degree, and also, um, that we can put on a rezzer, a holodeck like rezzer. And those of you who've ever seen Star Trek, I'm talking about a scene that appears when you select it and disappears or deletes itself when you don't. Okay? Now, let me check the audience really quickly. If you're sitting towards the end, I need a couple of you to move towards the center. That would be Imalak. I need you to move because I don't want to res projects on your head. And you too, Mary Lizard of ours, Mary Lou, if you would get up and move just a couple of seats over. I don't want content is going to appear. I'm going to be kicking off some rezzers and show you student projects, and I don't want you to be harmed. And you're not really going to be harmed, but it's disconcerting to have a building land on your head, right? So if you could get up and move over, and if you want to stay there, no worries. Let's face it, it's your second life, right? But here we go. So I'm going to click my rezzer, and you get a copy of this today. It's in the box. So if you're looking at the end, here, I'll be Vanna White and just get up. And when I teach, I move to content and I'm active and I'm building and creating and making a mess, okay? Um, so this box here, make sure you click it, get a copy of the stuff. You're going to get two rezzers, one that has my couch with animations that are no mod, and the other that's fully modifiable. Now this row here is going to have content on top of your heads. When I say row, I'll move up the steps. So anyone close to my body is going to have content on their heads. If you're okay with that, maybe you're AFK getting coffee, right? Then I will apologize right now. It's okay. We can try it out. But I recommend that you move in towards the aisle. Okay? So let's take a look at the first piece. Oh, maybe we should type this then. See, Lizard of ours has just clued us in that she could not hear, so she didn't hear that we need to get up and move in a little bit. Now you may be fine, Mary Lou, but Emilok is going to have content right near his body. But the good news is I'll make it phantom and you can move in through it. just like Casper the Ghost will be able to go inside our content. Now, my students, when they first create content that's going to go on a rezzer, they forget their permissions. Has anyone forgot your permissions before? Give me a yes or no in the text chat. Usually new students do all the time, right? Yeah. And I'm going to move this box so it's not in our way. It'll still be here, but I'm going to reduce its size a little bit and just move it over, right? We'll just move it. Thank you, Emalak, for moving, because I always feel bad when I drop a building on someone's head. I always get that Wizard of Oz feeling, right? And I never like you to feel disenfranchised. Now you're going to help me with today's demonstration because remember, the more interactive we are, the better the learning, right? And you know, Gentle mentioned this to me when one day she was asking if we had simulations of mass disasters, maybe earthquakes or floods or, you know, uh, hurricanes or tropical storms, ways in which people can practice their skills, whatever those are, to help and support people. And so I thought about that, these experiences that we like to simulate. Well, I'm not going to do that today, so don't worry. But I bring that up because we can simulate so many things here in world, and so that's part of the affordances of this world. Well, I'm going to click my rezzer, and I'm looking at the scene, but I actually want to volunteer. Do I have a volunteer today? You don't have to stand or anything. You just have to click things. Anyone? Give me a volunteer in the text chats. No one's going to volunteer because you don't know what I'm going to ask you to do, right? What I'm going to ask you to do is click the rezzer at my feet. I'm standing on it and make a selection. The first thing we're going to select, there you go, Shiloh. Click the rezzer and select the center bottom choice, which is called universal. If you would res that for us, okay? Now, the first time it reses, by the way, when you res my content, you're going to notice, and my apologies if it's on top of you. Let's do the other, let's see, let's do it one more time. So the folks on the edges. So I'd like someone to type the word clear in the text chat as one word, C-L-E-A-R. Type the word clear for me. There you go. So now we have power over our content, don't we? It's not just my power. We all have power. There we go. So let's try that again. Do we have another volunteer? If not, I'll go ahead and click it because you have to realize I'm showing students behind the scenes on my screen as we're doing it. Let's do Universe Lear and see if it's bigger. One of these is bigger. That's not it. So let's try Universal again. Oh, now it's rotating. Look at the first time it comes out, when you res my rezzer and use it in your classes, the first time this universe comes out, it's rotated on its side. The second time it comes out, it rolls over, in case you're wondering. It's a building, and we're inside, and if I didn't have the stadium here, it would be all dark. And we'd have some cheesy planets floating above us, right? And you could always make your own planets and save your own version of it and and use it. There's a little invisible object. If we I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. Yeah, you can. I'm going to make it go visible. I'm showing transparent right now if you were seeing my screen. And I'm going to raise it up for just a moment. I don't think it's going to influence the building though. And I'm going to make it visible. So there's this cheesy little black box. I'm going to change its color so you can see it. It's now red. That reses when you push my button on the rezzer. And this box here is the button, right? So when you package your project and you record it and you put it inside the button as individual component pieces. So like I have a a mosque that I built in 2006 for the Institute for Compassion and Peace, and it has like 250 pieces or something, right? All the pieces had to go in the box. Some of our students, we had 7 students who did a group project, and they built an entire region of content that all went inside the box. So when you click the box, it reses an entire region with 2 uh, and this is, of course, for the Mayan build. So it had Mayan temples and it had all these historical structures and ways of thinking. And then they mapped it to today's satellites and our connectivity from the early days to today. And it was really quite breathtaking, that project, right? So projects come in all shapes and sizes. But when you first res them, my rezzers has a flaw. um, it goes on its side and you have to res it twice to get it to roll over. Okay, so that's our first instruction. Now I know what you're thinking. I just gave away my power, didn't I, by saying that things don't always work the first time. Well, guess what? That made my doctoral students feel so much more comfortable. And by the way, I'm using the TED Talks model here to teach. I'm walking back and forth and on the stage looking at you, okay? So let's choose something else. Someone type the word clear for me. Anyone, can be everyone. Type clear in the text chat. It has to be in local chat. Okay, now I'm standing too close to this thing, so you'll notice, yep, that all of a sudden I start moving. The box is gone. It wasn't phantom, right? It's gone. I mean, it was phantom, but it's still gone. And we're going to make another choice. So I, in like 2010, I won a $500 prize for this silly little thing that I created. And of course, it's not rotating correctly, so let me move it off your head. My apologies. The problems with rezzers is that however you design them and save their contents, that's how they're coming out of the package, okay? So I can't rotate the circle on the ground and get this to rotate correctly. I had to do it manually just now. There's only 6 pieces, 5 signs, and the sculpture in front. And to me, the sculpture is the evolution of a prim. And you can click on it on what I'm standing on, this sculpture, and get a copy of the note card. And this is an early note card when I first designed it. And of course, things have changed in the viewer. In fact, by the way, you go left to right because we live in a Western culture here. If I was teaching students from around the world, I might change the orientation. But this is where we started, and this is what they did. And I put cheesy little red arrows to point out what to do. Now, the reason I created this is I know that students come and do their homework when I'm not here. And I don't want them to have to watch video, do I? I'll pull back my model. There's a reason. I don't want them to be in the 20%. I want them to be in the bottom of the learning pyramid, even if we criticize it. And I want them to learn not just beginning skills, but as we get over here to the far right, I want them to learn intermediate texturing skills and to texture one face of that Tiffany lamp. Now let me lower it a little bit in case you can't see, right? Or raise it up, you know? But anyway, my students would get a copy of all this content. They'd get a copy of the rezzer. They had space across 2 regions to create their projects. And there is a flaw with my rezzer. You want to make sure that students are at least 99 meters apart. You know why? Because somebody typed the word clear for me in the local chat. Just type the word clear. Yeah. And what happened? My learning activity disappeared. If I was designing a new resable content to put on that rezzer, right? And I took my project that I just created on the ground and I'd forgotten to save a copy of it. And I put the component rezzing script inside each piece of and by the way, when I say piece, I mean a link set. So if you have an object like my sculpture with 6 or 7 different prims that are a tube becomes a lamp, right? The whole thing what will happen to it if someone types the word clear or clicks on their rezzer? Someone tell me in the text chat. What happens if someone types clear or or someone clicks on a rezzer and they're too close together with their projects? Do you know what happens? You've seen evidence of it. We can practice again. And what I do is I slowly reinforce these behaviors for students. Why copy permissions matter. That's right. You will accidentally get rid of your friend's project. And I know you're thinking, well, why don't you design a rezzer that uses a number, and does slash number to res it rather than local chat? Because I want students to understand the power of local chat first, to have a low cognitive load. In other words, they don't have to stress about, how to use things. Now I'm going to res a game. My apologies to Pionia and others who are recording. Um, One of my students created a game room and I helped them to create the walls and all, and then they made copies of them and linked them and made this room. And the game has this musical chairs game from the Victorian ages, right? And also has a chess game. How many of you have a copy of this chess game? This is one of the early designs in Second Life. It's probably from 2004 or 2005, and it reses the pieces. I could show you this, but then they'll stay for about a minute because they are temp on res. So when the board disappears, the pieces stay um, we until a minute passes. And I don't want to clutter the region for Joyce. She's probably already feeling a little alarmed, right? Now, for those of you who are outside the room, my apologies. Um, you can see, let's make it go away. Type the word clear. And if you weren't able to see, there is a piano that appears, but it looks like it didn't come out. Let's ask for it again. We won't keep it up for long, but here's a piano. So there's a piano that plays music. And notice it came into position behind me somewhere. It's behind the viewer. So when you res these things, you can have fun with them. You could fix them if you wanted them to behave differently, and you could save them again using a process that I have built inside the system, thanks to Dr. Andy Stricker. So type the word clear, please. And I know you're wondering, what is all this text in the text chat, right? Well, this text is a debug series of statements that tells us where are the different components going to land, their XYZ locations in relationship to this thing. And many of them are grounding to 0, in case you're wondering. They're all anchoring to this object I have on the ground. So if I wanted it to start out somewhere else, I'd have to move the object. Let's go back to school. We're going to res the pirate school from Alley Resident. And of course, as it's first coming in, it's misbehaving. So I'm going to do it twice. I'm going to type the word clear and do it again. Because remember, the first time it rotates oddly. The second time it comes into position. So if you're looking over in the direction I'm looking, which is to my left, to your right, you'll notice there's a schoolhouse resing and it whips around after about 10 seconds. So there's a little delaying factor. There's a little timing issue. Nothing in life is perfect, especially if it's free, okay? And that includes some of the animations we use, etc. But I'm going to open the door on school. So if you're just moving your camera, and if you can't move your camera, I always tell students, Alt click my body. Hold down your Alt key if you're on a Windows machine, or the Option key or Control, whatever it is you're using on your Mac, and then left click my body to lock on to me. And then I move over, if you've locked on, and I demonstrate the content and their heads roll with me. I could watch as all of their heads would move with me, and I would get visual evidence of who's paying attention. Now, why is this important? And if any of you have clicked on the schoolhouse, you're now sitting inside it, right? Because Allie's content draws you inside, and I can peek inside and see if anyone popped over there or crashed. My apologies if my content made you crash. But that was by Allie Resident, the person that I mentioned at the end of my talk here, the formal talk. Oh, and I have a second set of slides. Let me pull those out just real quick, and you have a copy of them in your package. So when Leonard Nimoy died, who was Spock in Star Trek, and I'll have a seat for a moment. We're about to wind up for those of you who are watching in Zoom. When Leonard Nimoy died, I cried like a baby. I grew up with Star Trek. You know, I was very young when it came out, and I loved it. And it caught my imagination. So here in the virtual world, that's me wearing a Starfleet uniform and doing a salute to Leonard Nimoy. I ran a workshop for my school and invited 7,000 people. I knew they couldn't all come, so that was okay. And I invited them to come learn how to do holodecks. And of course, this is an image from Wikipedia, and these were my heroes. And Spock and Data were my heroes when I was growing up, and even as a young woman. And what is a holodeck? Well, it's the notion that we have these resible spaces that appear on demand and disappear when we're done. And of course, we could have used our voices and said, computer, load program, right? But in this case, we're not. And I showed my attendees that this object on the ground, when you click it and say new scene, the new scene is at the bottom image and an invisible box appears. And that is actually the button. So everything we record, that we put a little script in from our designs, we type the word record and it records the coordinates. We put all the pieces inside that box. So we have to take them into our inventory, drag them into the box, the contents of that box, the red glowing one at the bottom. And then we rename the button to be whatever we want to appear on our menu. And the menu is there in the lower right corner. For me, it's in the upper right corner because I like that style. I even created the little texture and a matrix-like room for them to have fun, creating our holodecks within a hollow suite, right? And of course, if you notice, the button name has to be, I think it's like 12 digits or less. Any longer and it'll truncate. So we've been rezzing Universal and the Piano 4 game. It was the game room. We've been rezzing School 2 with that alley residence school over on the side. It has a lot of desks in it and it's a lot of fun. My students also they created a Dr. Demento. How many of you remember Dr. Demento from the radio? Some of you are going, radio? Who has radio? No. But back in the old days, Dr. Demento on the weekends had the most amazing radio show with the quirky cultural folk songs and really fun stuff. And I even remember all the Christmas songs. I got the album one year, and when I say album, I do mean vinyl. Building 101 is my little guide to how to build, how to create this. How to right click the ground, create a tube. I always have to find the tube, right? And close the hole on the object tab, and that's just the hole size. Y equals I think it's 0.5. Yep, the top is closed. I'll tilt it so you can see. And then of course then we twist it. Actually, we hollow it first. So let's hollow it 80%. I went 95 for some reason. There we go. No idea. Make sure I'm grabbing the right thing. Who knows? And then I will twist it 36 degrees. Maybe I grabbed the wrong shape. That's what this means. So when you start with the wrong shape and see all of a sudden our fear factor, right? No, I'm grabbing the right one. Oh, I know what it is. I didn't give it a profile cut. I forgot a step of my own learning simulation. And that's because I haven't really worked with this in ages. But the profile cut, if I give it a 0.25, there we go. We have a waistline now. And then I hollow it 80%. There we go. Our first useful shape is a stool. And I could stretch this up and sit on it and it'd be just fun, right? That's one of the gifts here in Second Life. Let's see if I can sit on it or if I'm wrong, right? The make me a newbie. Yep, I can sit on it. So I have a useful shape. I don't have any animation or anything. I've taken a tube, I profile cut it 20 to 0.25 and I hollowed it to 80. And this is what it looks like. One prim, the power of the prim. And then I can take this and I'll lower it down a little bit, okay? And then I can get behind it so you can see, because that's important. And I can shift drag it, so we have two of them. And I can twist it 36 degrees, which just means twist begin and end 36, right? And there we are with our little thing. And then I could reduce the size of the bowl below it, or I could turn it upside down. So it starts out looking like a fountain spigot where I can have water coming out of it and stuff. Now it becomes a lamp, and then I start texturing it, right? And if I was really, really lazy and I didn't know what the name of the texture was, I could click my rezzer. I could ask for building 101. It's going to be in our way. My apologies. Because remember, the rezzer is not going to rotate, but I'll just move these and rotate them by hand so they're out of your way, right? And if you notice, I am now most of the way through my steps here. I will bring out the sculpture and I'm going to reduce its size a little bit so it's just not in our way, right? And I do this for my students, and this gives them fear, right? Because I'm going so fast, and comfort that one day they'll be able to do it too. So fear and comfort. So I started with the shape on the far left. I gave it a profile cut. I hollowed it 80% and it became a stool. I twisted it 36 degrees and it became that fountain. I flipped it upside down and it became a stubby lamp, like a desk lamp. I stretched it up and it became a taller lamp. But now I need to texture mine, don't I? Doesn't look very impressive like this, right? So, um, here's what I'm going to do. If I don't remember the name of my texture, I'm going to texture the whole thing gold first by using the eyedropper and clicking on the gold. Notice now mine is gold. And I'm going to turn on Fulbright on mine so you can see what I'm talking about. And I'm also going to make mine red so you can see which one is hers, right? Hers is the red one. And I'll make it a little larger because let's face it, right? And then I'm going to do just the lampshade. I'm going to click my eyedropper. Wait a minute. First, I must click select face. That's why there's an arrow pointing to it. And I click on the lampshade alone with select face, then the eyedropper, and I'm going to click on that stained glass image, which is actually from the Heretic game from long, long ago. Quite a few games, their textures are here in World from 2004 through 6 because they were given to designers to create mods and add-ons and other kinds of designs. Now I'm going to take the red off of my just my lampshade. I'll go back to blank. And then I need to rotate it, don't I? I'll stretch it a little more so you can see a little easier. See how the texture's on its side? Well, I need to rotate that by rotating the degrees. And let's try 90 first. And if it's not upright, then I could do negative 90. And it's fine, but it's stretched out of shape, isn't it? Really, really wide. So I need to rotate that texture or multiply it. Let's multiply it by 3. We'll try the horizontal first. And if it, yeah, that worked beautifully. Notice? And I don't have the ornament texture on, but I could grab that one too. So students are learning how to use the eyedropper. They get a copy of my textures on the note card when you click on the sculpture. It gives a note card with instructions. It gives all of the textures. It gives an example of the final project. And in 10 minutes or less, they learn beginning and intermediate texturing skills the first 10 minutes they are in a virtual world. In other words, I don't even let them put their clothes on before we do this. And that's how my first 3 years in the virtual world went once I created this little sculpture. Why did I do this? As soon as a student can create, make something appear that didn't exist before, I have them. I have their attention, I have their interest, and they love it. It becomes their world. This is the power of creation that I'm talking about and why it matters. And when they create a Tiffany lamp that looks kind of pretty, you know, and of course, I'll let them use other textures. I give them like, I don't know, 500 different textures of all different types. And then I say, go create. Someone type the word clear for me for a moment. By reinforcing the behaviors, by asking them to be fearless and to design, to develop, and have fun, by not being afraid to drop a building on someone's head or to have a playful spirit, they learn that it's okay to make mistakes, to have fun, and to enjoy it. I'm going to bring out my couch. This was a fractal couch I created in like 2007. And of course, it's not rendering right the first time, is it? It's halfway in the ground. We have to rotate it. We'll do couch again. And here it is. This is how it looks. I'm going to rotate it for you because when I designed it in so long ago, right, I wasn't thinking about today. And yes, I went flying, but that's okay. That's part of that playful spirit. And the reason I designed this couch was not to lay down, although I do, but to design a seating arrangement that would hold 11 people without their bodies touching each other. This is inside your rezzer for today, one of the gifts from me, and I will recolor it a little lighter, okay? I will make this a little brighter. There we go. And I guess I could make it a little darker and then also turn on full bright so you get a sense of it, okay? There we go. And then I'm going to show you these animations. So I teach students how to use scripts and modify them quickly. Remember, our model is in 10 minutes or less, we can build this. In 10 minutes or less, we can put it on a rezzer and it'll make mistakes. In 10 minutes or less, we can think about the world and the experiences we want to examine and study. And my students are examining cyberbullying, they're examining cyber threats and data breaches, they're examining uh, things that cause us to go to war and how to prevent them. They're examining nowadays a lot of AI, right? Because I teach artificial intelligence at the doctoral level, and I'm teaching my 9th class in it at this point. Are there any questions for me as we conclude today's demonstration and Virtual World's MOOC kickoff on the power of creation? I'm Dr. Cynthia Calongne, better known as Lobo in the virtual world, and thank you for joining me for today's class. Someone type clear for me. And you notice my world is self-cleaning. I'm ready to go at the end of class. And of course, life is good. We look good, we feel good, we've learned, and we've stayed within our time. And that's the way my classes go. Only students see behind the scenes on my desktop everything I'm doing. Thank you. Enjoy the power of creation. If you didn't get a copy of today's materials, there are 2 things you need to copy. 1, you can take my box if you want, because it does have my Give Contents to Everyone script. I will make it copyable. If it isn't, it isn't. But we'll make a copy, and one of these 2 boxes is easy to copy right now. The other, you just click on it and it gives you the contents. This is copyable also, and these are my slides. The other slides, the Leonard Nimoy ones, they're inside the box. And my message to you is live long and prosper. And all the things I talked about are inside here with instructions. And you know what I didn't do? I didn't show you the star chamber. I have to do it twice, but it's a tutorial with 14 slides that shows you how to create your own Rezzable projects. And the viewer is over here that takes you through every step. All of the scripts are available within the simulation. One is in the piece parts, one is in the button, and was called new scene, and one is inside the rezzer that's on the ground. That's all there is. Have a great MOOC. Bye, everyone.